Hello, everyone. Discombobulated here. I heard that they used a secret weapon called the discombobulator to capture Maduro in Venezuela. And it really kind of captured my imagination, and I kind of wondered about, the effects and everything. And the major thing seemed like that the guys who were affected by it said they felt like their head was going to explode. And and then I started thinking about more about what it means to be discombobulated, and I just looked up a little more for a definition, and it basically says to confuse, confound, or bewilder, a state of being completely puzzled, confused, or perplexed, often to the point of being unable to understand or make decisions. Well, that's how I had come up with that name for this channel, because I felt like, in a way, that my past life was a secret weapon called the discombobulator. And then, even though I was able to walk away from it, that I haven't been the same since. Especially after the night the police and the SWAT team jumped me and pepper sprayed me in the pond that night. That was sort of the beginning of well, that was the major discombobulation for sure. And then that led to tremors, you know, more drinking, a criminal record, which made it harder to find a job. It just opened the door to all kinds of, bad stuff. And I've also, in a way, just as another analogy, I felt as though I was involved in a really horrible car crash, but I managed to walk away, but I haven't been the same since. And but I feel like I'm getting on track now, and starting to make some decisions, get a little energy, get a little bit of direction. Um, I just wanted to talk about it. I had taken action on a couple things. One of the big things I had talked about before was testosterone, and I followed through and called the clinic. And it turns out that they don't take Medicaid. It's $150 to go in and I think get blood work done or some kind of test. And then it's 125 to go back and get what they call a pellet put in. And I didn't know what that was. And so I asked, and it turns out they make a small incision in you and put a thing called a pellet inside you that's like slow release over 6 months. Now, I really am holding out hope for that. And, it's tax time now, so I think I can maybe get my tax return. But um, I just think as a result, I mean, there's other problems, like, you know, uh, say, maybe childhood issues or father issues, grandfather issues. Okay, I know those are there, but I feel like the result of that, the result of the discombobulation that happened in my life, that it crushed my testosterone, that it just pushed it out of me, or just it got all used up, or something happened there. I'm thinking, I'm not sure. So, but I'm definitely pretty excited about that. And then the other thing I'm thinking about doing, just because I'm still feeling so stuck, is a magic mushroom experience. Doing some like a really heavy dose, a hero's dose of magic mushrooms. Now, I have some recreational experience there, and it's probably one of my most favorite things to do in the world. I've only done it, like, say, maybe a half a dozen times, and I've had some kind of fun experiences, but it usually almost always leads to crying and all kinds of introspection. And I realize that I have super deep love for certain people. A lot of things like come up like that, and so I felt like that was really helpful. But I'm also very scared of it, because one time out in the desert, I had done a pretty serious dose, and I would describe it as a bad trip. It was a really awesome trip, but that then turned into a bad trip. And uh, I'll maybe just talk about that just briefly, and then maybe another day I'll talk more. But I was laying on a rock when I had done it, and I was looking out at the world, the desert, the junipers, the sage, the wind, the sun, the clouds. Everything got really beautiful and really wonderful. And then I laid back on this big flat rock, and then somewhere it quit being that fun, trippy look at the colors thing. And I felt like there was a sort of invisible octopus in that rock that latched onto my spine and pulled me inside of that rock, like shot tentacles through up into my spinal cord, right into my brain, and connected with me. And I feel like it taught me a whole bunch of stuff that I, I don't even know. I still can't even make sense of it, but it was both wonderful and horrifying. And then when I came to, I was by a near spot where I had fires earlier, and my hand was laying in the ash pile, and my phone was in the ash pile. But I thought that maybe the fire was just recently put out, and maybe I burned myself, and my phone appeared to be melted. And then I looked around, and everything seemed burnt. My car seemed like it was sitting crooked, and I got up and I walked over to the car, and the total car inside was like melted plastic and headliner, and my dash was melted, and the cats were in there, but everything seemed charred. And I grabbed water and threw it all around, and I like panicked and really freaked out. And luckily, my cell phone worked, and I called the person who I'd had some experience with before, and he kind of talked me down, talked me out of it. And then I realized still took a little while that things were fine with the car. It hadn't been burned, nothing. And then it wasn't just a car, but I thought maybe I had burned the surrounding area down too. So I don't know what that was about, but it was super horrifying, super horrifying. So whenever I obtain any mushrooms, I usually don't do them right away. I try to wait for like the right setting, the right time. And so it's kind of hard, but I feel like just in the upcoming weeks here, when I get a little more cash, I'm gonna try to just really hammer my brain and see if that can't bring me some relief. All right, so uh, if anybody has any experiences, anything about that, or just wants to talk about that, I'd really appreciate your comments surrounding that. Um, Now, the other thing is, the reason I'm looking to outside things is because I've had a lot of talk therapy in the past. Like, as I was going through my divorce, there was counseling. When my one girlfriend first got pregnant, got really depressed and stuff. And so I started going to a men's group and a counselor and doing talk therapy where I talked about issues with my father, talked about issues with my grandfather, and I just feel like all the talking and the thinking and the trying to let it go was never really. I I still don't know how to actually let things go. So now I'm turning to exterior things to try to help. And so the other thing that just came up was like when I was working at the restaurants, there was a girl. I think I was working a double, and I was kind of run down. And one of my coworkers, she said, "Here, take this. This will help you." And she had cut a little pink tablet in half. It turns out it was a half Adderall. And I took that, and in about like an hour, I felt great. Like my thinking cleared up. I felt like, energized, super capable, competent. Can't really, and I got just like a taste of that. I did have a hard time sleeping that night, but I sort of didn't care because I was doing a lot of thinking, kind of making some goals, like writing a list of things to do. And that's probably been my hardest or my biggest obstacle just over the past few months is just that lack of energy, the inability to concentrate, just going around discombobulated. And so she had given me over the course of time, she had slipped me a couple other halves, but I didn't take them. I saved them. And I had to work on, I have a motorcycle, a 650 sport bike, and I had to redo the carburetors on it. And there's 4 carburetors, and they're complicated. And I kept putting it off. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to do it this weekend, and I'm going to, take an Adderall. And uh, so I did. And I was able to accomplish so much that day. And it just really got me thinking, well, maybe I have ADHD, even though I'm not 13 or 7 or seems like mostly that stuff gets prescribed for kids these days. And so I talked to my therapist about it, and she made me an appointment with what I imagine to be a psychiatrist, which is in about a week. And they also gave me a form. I filled out a brief form, just like a really one pager, when she uh, talked to me about it. And then I had filled out a similar type of form in the doctor's office because I just told him this was even when I was was still working. I don't feel that great. I'm always kind of depressed feeling. I feel like, there was one question, how would you rate your overall life? And I think it was like 1 through 5. And I might have put something like extremely dissatisfied or something. But that questionnaire is what led me to the counselor. And then, which I get to see her again this week. I'm kind of excited about that. And uh, but I just thought it would be fun just to look at a couple of these questions here. So, like, there's one here that just says, concentration problems are easily distracted. And then the range is 0 through 4. On 0, it's not at all, very slightly. And then 4 is very much. And then there's mildly, moderately, or quite a bit in the middle. So I'd say concentration problems, easily distracted. I'd have to give that a 4. Anxious, worrying, 4. Nervous and fidgety, not really. Inattentive, daydreaming, 4. Hot or short-tempered, low boiling point. Ugh, I've been going through that a lot lately. Like, I have 3 cats, and just in the course of making the videos, sometimes I'll push the record button, and then the cat will be at the door right away and be like, meow, and it will like bust my concentration. And then instead of just keeping my cool, I'll be like, damn it, I get so. And then they open the door, and I talk mean to the cat. I'm like, get in here. And then he comes in, he starts crunching his food bowl. And I normally, like, I feel like I'm not like that, but I have this real low boiling point. And then, so there's like sad, blue, and depressed, unhappy. I'd say 4. But okay, so, well, whatever. Then there's different categories, and it goes through like maybe how you were younger when you were in school. Were you an overall good student, which I was. Were you a slow reader, or did you have trouble reversing letters? Which I did do that. I wrote completely backwards for I don't even know how long, but that eventually straightened out. Bad handwriting. I was left-handed, so my handwriting. I remember one teacher tried to switch me to write for a while. She finally gave up. Suspended or expelled. I didn't so much that, but I got sent to the principal's office a lot. And well, you kind of get the idea. And so then there's also a part of this. It's called an ADHD screening packet. And then you're supposed to have your parents fill out a section, and then a friend or somebody knows you daily, fill out a section of it too, and then bring it back. So when I look at the questions, I have a feeling by the time I do this that it's going to put me in that zone. And so I don't know what the side effects might be of it. I don't know if it's going to be a dependency thing or whatever, but I sort of don't even care at this point. I feel like things can't get much worse. Well, they could. I take that back, and I actually feel like things are getting a lot better. And then, if I may, I'd like to talk about the job front a little bit. I had been thinking about substitute teaching, and I know people that know me from my channel here probably have a hard time imagining that at one time I was a sharp pencil and that I was a more of a normal person. And when I first got out of college, I would describe myself as, bright and energetic and kind of a go-getter, and that's how I was able to get my photography business and going, and stuff like that. And I had used to think it would be cool to be a professor at college, and I liked that idea a lot, but I just, in a way, I couldn't picture it also. And then I'd kind of thought about this substitute teaching idea and trying to picture myself in that role. And could I even stand up and talk in front of kids? Like, could I relate to them? Could I pull my thoughts together enough? What would it be like just going in that building and having those locked doors and being surrounded by, uh, probably a bunch of liberal blue haired teachers or something? I don't even know what it would be like, but amazingly, I don't have a criminal record. Uh, I have a degree, I have a bachelor's degree, so it looks like I meet all the basic requirements, but it turns out the pay is like just kind of, it's not really a man's wage. It's like $90 uh, for like a 6 hour day, and then maybe 120 for a longer day. And I've seen the scale, but I still just can't picture it, kind of. And so I talked to a friend who used to work under me at a protein factory where I was a maintenance man and a carpenter, and I was building a lot of stuff. And he's just like a young Mexican guy who really didn't even know how to use a tape measure when I met him. And he joined a union here, and he's only been in the union for a year and a half, and he's already up to $28.50 an hour. Plus, he's getting overtime and benefits and everything. And well, down there in Florida, where I was at, there were no unions, and the pay was just pretty much crappy. If you didn't have your own business and you had to work by the hour, you had all the immigrants, vying for the same jobs. You were usually, those were your coworkers. You're all making like, 16 to $20 an hour. It was really hard to work your way up. I can't really explain what's wrong with Florida, but that's a thing there. It's just really hard to make any money unless you have your own business. And when I moved here, I heard about the union, and but I think by that point, my confidence was already kind of low. I was kind of beat up, feeling, and I was just like, yeah, they probably are not going to want to hire me. They're going to want a lot of experience. I just didn't know anything about it. But when I heard him talking about it, I was like, oh, I could probably do that. And I was like, I'm probably too old to do it. And then I just said, "You think I'm too old, man, or you think?" And he was like, "Yeah, no, man, you could do it." He said, "You could go in as a journeyman, Brian." He said, "You're boss material." I still have a hard time believing that. I mean, I know my carpentry's good, but my leadership skills are just not there. I have a hard time getting anybody to do anything for me, and so but I don't even care if I started at a apprentice level. It's still probably around $20. I think it's like he started at like 23 an hour or something like that. Which for me, I mean, I just left that job making $19 an hour, which was really not enough. That's not a man's wage either. I got my tax statement in the mail, and I made 28,000 there in the 9 months that I was there, and that was before taxes. And it kind of sounds okay, but it's really just not enough in today's world at all. And that's why I just don't want to go back and try to find another $19 an hour job or $20 an hour job because, um, like I shared before, I feel like I'm in the last 10 years of my life. I'm in my marginal decade. And I said that 10 years ago, so I only have 9 years left now. And at $19 an hour, I'm not going to be able to go explore the desert. I'm not going to be able to buy a new pickup truck or even get a rental car or do anything like that, or just do anything but work and slave and grind and get by. So I'm super excited about the possibility of the union thing. And then I talked to my brother about it, and it turned out he had a little experience there with it in Washington State. And he told me how important it was to get all my skills down and get my resume super polished, because once you go in, that's kind of what sets your pay grade. And they do some testing, like say they might have you cut a piece of drywall, and then you have to ask for the tools that you need, and they can kind of figure out where you're at there. So after I talked to my buddy Carlos and then my brother, I go, oh man, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go back there to the world of men, and I'm going to try to hammer it out again. And, my brother did say, because he kind of knows where I'm at, he said, you're going to have to take orders, and you're going to have to eat some shit sandwiches. And, I'm like, okay, I'm just about ready to take another bite of that big shit sandwich. Put some Thousand Island dressing on it or something. But like my buddy Carlos, I think he said he's bringing home $1,800 a week. He just bought a new, really nice truck with cash. And one the interesting thing there is he's actually an illegal immigrant. He's a dreamer, and he doesn't have his papers. And I've been going down the tubes, and he's been climbing the ladder of life. And I don't understand how it all works. I'm just so bewildered about the whole thing sometimes. But in general, I'm feeling a lot better. I'd really like to hear from anybody about my, even about the union experience, or just anything that I've talked about. I appreciate y'all listening to me, and I'll see you next time.